The role-playing game world is a little divided on this, whether role-playing is acting or is it not acting. When I hear someone in the OSR community talk about how D&D is not acting, they always devolve into name-calling. You're a soy boy! D&D's not your therapy session. Matt Mercer and everyone on Critical Role aren't playing real D&D. They're just actors. Fucking idiots, the lot of them. I was not part of the old school part of our hobby. I was of the age what I like to call mid-school. Late 80s and on. Though my very first game was 1st edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, really I came into 2nd edition AD&D, which is really just a rules cleanup of 1st edition codifying everything and then adding THACO or THACO, which made things easier. Back in the day, I never really had a problem with that system, but whatever, we've moved on. I do think that at least my table is better off without it, because I'm not here for rules crunch. Was that even a segue? I don't know.
Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss an upload. And join the conversation over at the Agranak Cult Discord.
Matt Mercer is part of that mid-school generation of gamers. He came in at about 2nd edition. And like him, we both heard the term role-playing, and then our friends that may have already been playing were like, yeah, you can kind of be like Conan or Bilbo and kind of do whatever you want though. It's taking on a role. Now, early gaming, in the mind of Gary Gygax, when you took on a role, you were taking on an actual class like fighting man, thief, priest, or mage, and even merchant and knight, I believe. And there was a bunch of others, elf, dwarf, etc. So that was your role, or at least that was the idea. But that choice of title, role-playing game, stuck. And here we are now, RPGs, TTRPGs, and what have you. So being part of the mid-school, I didn't understand the war game aspect of the hobby and how it developed. I wanted to act vicariously through a fictional character. That idea was what attracted me to role-playing games in the first place. Once I had my first game with my first character, Magellan, I was hooked. And I haven't looked back, and I've been playing since then. Let me go a little bit deeper. I remember watching a video with another D&D tuber, and they were talking about how when they play, they're imagining their character in the third person, watching their character do things. I have never, ever done that. My wife, who's been playing with me since that time, and even before I started playing, doesn't do that either. I've always looked at my character in a first-person scenario. I am that character. I get into the role. Those mid-school gamers, not all of them, but many of them, seem to be the ones that really started off with this idea of giving a character background, writing out a 13-page backstory, and even handcrafting their own spell books, because it was a different sort of investment. We wanted to really get into the headspace of the role, because that's where we were coming from. I've been in many a game with those third-person mindset players, and I've got to say, I personally don't like it. It's not the game I want to play. To me, it's like reading through tax forms or something rather than playing a game. You're rolling dice, you're reacting to your environment, everything looks kind of the same, but it's the mindset that I think is different. Listen, I understand not everyone is an actor. But if you are a monotone version of yourself when playing the game, next, sorry, later, is your fun wrong? It's not, but neither is mine. I have to discriminate against those that I don't want to play with, the ones I cannot engage with in a fantasy world. I would rather not play or spend my time trying to find the right people or close to the right people, at least compatible, than sit down with people that I'm not jiving with. You may be sitting there watching this and going, I don't want the pressure of acting. Who the fuck is this guy? That's fine. In fact, that's the reason for me posting this. Not everybody's going to play the game the same way, which is the beauty of the game. To me, role-playing is acting. And listen, there are tables for everyone in this hobby. Seriously. Oh, and not that you needed permission, but you don't have to tolerate everyone. Just like many people probably have already clicked off of this video, just for the introduction alone. If you don't like a group, move on. Or if need be, politely ask people to leave the group.
Bye, Felicia.
Especially if they're not a good fit. So what is acting? Do I need you to be a movie-grade actor? Absolutely not. You don't have to be a professional actor in order to play a role like what I'm thinking about. 95% of us have at least attempted at one time in your life to play pretend. It's a staple as a child. Back in my day, we played cops and robbers and pirates and Star Wars and all this. Let me put it another way. When reading a fictional story, especially to someone else, do you put a little pizzazz on it, or do you just read it monotone? Let me read something out of The Hobbit. By and large, and this isn't everybody, but I would say the majority of those third-person people are kind of like this when they're dealing with their characters. This isn't a judgment, this is an observation. Let me read it first like the people I don't want to play with. All that the unsuspecting Bilbo saw that morning was an old man with a staff. He had a tall pointed blue hat, a long gray cloak, a silver scarf over which his long white beard hung down below his waist, and immense black boots. "Good morning," said Bilbo. He meant it. The sun was shining, and the grass was very green. But Gandalf looked at him from under long bushy eyebrows that stuck out farther than the brim of his shady hat. "What do you mean?" he said. "Do you wish me a good morning, or mean that it is a good morning, whether I want it or not, or that you feel good this morning, or that it is a morning to be good on?" "All of them at once," said Bilbo, "and a very fine morning for a pipe of tobacco out of doors, into the bargain. If you have a pipe about you, sit down and have a fill of mine. There's no hurry. We have all day before us." Then Bilbo sat down on a seat by his door, crossed his legs, and blew out a beautiful gray ring of smoke, and that sailed up into the air without breaking and floating away over the hill. Now let me read it by acting. All that the unsuspecting Bilbo saw that morning was an old man with a staff. He had a tall pointed blue hat, a long grey cloak, a silver scarf over which his long white beard hung down below his waist, and immense black boots. "Good morning," said Bilbo, and he meant it. The sun was shining and the grass was very green, but Gandalf looked at him from under long bushy eyebrows that stuck out farther than the brim of his shady hat. "What do you mean?" he said. "Do you wish me a good morning, or mean that it is a good morning whether I want it or not, or that you feel good this morning, or that it is a morning to be good on?" "All of them at once," said Bilbo, "and a very fine morning for a pipe of tobacco out of doors, into the bargain. If you have a pipe about you, sit down and have a fill of mine. There's no hurry. We have all day before us." Then Bilbo sat down on the seat by his door, crossed his legs, and blew out a beautiful grey ring of smoke that sailed up into the air without breaking and floated away over the hill. One way may not be better than the other overall. You may prefer the more monotone because you can imagine it more, perhaps. But I want color. I want a little tinge of an accent. I want a voice that floats up and down and all around the words. This ignites my imagination, which brings me personally deeper into the story or to the game itself, whether there's a plot laid out or not. Even if you're doing a basic fetch mission, I want to know what my surroundings look like. The colors, the smell, the taste, the touch, everything. I want the dungeon master to bring down his voice to a whisper when it's time to get intense on something. That brings me in. Or to be loud and boisterous whenever need be. I want the colors of this world to blast at me as I vicariously live in it. First person. To me, D&D is acting. DMing is especially acting. Again, we use the terms role, play, and I'll add improv. If you go to an acting class, you will see all three of these words used freely, which is why I'm so at home with it. Now, my day job is acting and managing people that act at a theme park. I would not be doing my current job if it wasn't for Dungeons and Dragons. It was literally my introduction to wanting to become a performer. I always scratch my head when people start pointing fingers, especially at Matt Mercer, and I'm not a critter at all. Just to make that clear, I've watched a handful of episodes, but they accuse the cast of acting out a script. I've watched enough to know that my games don't look that much different than what is on that screen. At least in my head, I'm not saying that I'm as good as Matt Mercer or anything like that. But people automatically knee-jerk and say, well, they're actors and they have a popular show, so it must be scripted. I'm sorry, I just don't buy it. These are a bunch of nerds that are actors, so they bring their craft to the table, so it might just look better than your table. It doesn't mean that it's scripted. If there is any scripting going on, then I don't think it's any different than if a player were to come to a dungeon master and say, hey, I'd really like to kill off my character because I'm planning on playing this other role. Or I was thinking of a different arc for my character. Could I maybe start going down this other path so that I can do this other class? Is that scripted? Or is it just, here's a scenario I would like to see? And the DM is creating situations, and the dice and the character's actions are determining what's happening. Who knows, I may be all wrong, and we're going to find out that Critical Role has been scripted from the beginning, and everybody's going to point at this video and say, you're an idiot. But I know that my table, that doesn't have a lot of actors in it, are acting really awesome in it. I do specific things with my table to draw out that acting experience so that I'm satisfied as a dungeon master with people that are not actors. If you want to see a video like that, leave me a comment down below. All right, that's my 2 cents. What do you think? Is D&D acting or is it not? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks for stopping by Agranak Studios today, and we'll see you on the next one. Later.
This video was brought to you by the generous support of our patrons. Consider becoming a patron so you can help us make more content like this. Or get yourself a t-shirt below. Later. Alright, do this and do that and do this and do that. And watch this video.